72 of Tech Sales Insights. We are very excited to have Dan Wright, CEO of DataRobot. Dan, how you doing?
Doing great. How you doing, Randy?
Excellent. Thank you. Nour, always a pleasure.
Randy, good to see you.
And Dan, for those that may not recognize it, so that's called a suit. And the thing down here from his neck is called a tie. So he's just coming from, if I'm allowed to say, a meeting with the governor of West Virginia. And we'll talk about the West Virginia program later. So definitely appreciate you making the time for us today. So as always, this is brought to you by Sales Community. If you want to learn more, sell more, network, check out salescommunity.com. And we are sponsored by Captivate IQ. They are for Sales Community, they are our sales commission software platform sponsor. And they are the new standard in commission management. The way I look at it, and we'll probably get to it a little bit later on, Dan and I have some involvement with them, but you've got some of the, I'll say, older school commission software platforms, and they're more new school. So if you want updates fast, quick, actually have a comp plan that resembles the sales behavior that you want, have reps be able to easily see what's going on, Captivate IQ is for you. So we have a title today, How to Build a Company That Changes the World. And I can attest firsthand, DataRobot is certainly changing the world. Dan and I, unlike some of our other guests, had kind of only recently met since he joined DataRobot. I think professionally, our first really interaction was working with Bank of America on some high-level executive things there, which all went fantastic. On Dan's watch, the growth of the revenue and customers has been amazing. He's done a great job helping to grow and operationalize the company and really have it, I'll say, grow up and grow up in a really good, great way. He's made some changes to the team and board members, which we'll also talk about later. And for what I've seen, he's very hands-on, an authentic leader. And the wind beneath his wings a little bit, I think I'm going to say, is Holly. So shout out to Holly for all of her help behind the scenes. And another thing that we have in common, Nour, is Boston College. So I know you're always asking to get more BC folks, although he has the law school spin, which I'd say is probably the first BC law person that we've had. So Nour, you want to start us off?
Yeah, would love to, Dan. Welcome. Glad to have you. Would love to hear a little about your professional background, kind of where you've been, what you've done, and how you arrived here.
Yeah, thanks. Well, as Randy was mentioning, I am a lawyer by background. So I actually studied business in college, but I ended up going to law school. And I got out of law school and joined a very large law firm, Goodwin, which some people in Boston will know, and started working with lots of technology companies. And that led me, after seeing the movie many times, to say, hey, I want to be in the movie. I want to help be part of the movie, write the movie. And so I joined one of those companies early on, a company called App Dynamics, joined around 150 people in one room in San Francisco. And we went from that to thousands of people all over the world. And we're about to take the company public. And then we're acquired by Cisco at the last minute, literally 2 days before our IPO. And then decided that, like a lot of people, I wanted to do it again, but I wanted to do something bigger and hopefully more impactful. And that brought me to DataRobot, where I've been for a little over 2 years at DataRobot.
What was the biggest challenge in transitioning from that, the attorney and maybe the mindset to one of a business leader, where you got a broader purview and you got to run the entire organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more just understanding that you have to think of everything kind of 360 degrees when it comes to any problem that you might encounter in building a business, right? And you have to take some risks, right? And as a lawyer, you're taught to avoid risks or to mitigate risks. And so you actually have to embrace calculated risk. And I'd say that was a challenge, but a really fun challenge that, allowed me to grow a lot personally. And, I learned a lot from it.
That's great.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about DataRobot. So this is really easy for me to give a commercial. So I've been sort of advising consulting for over 3 years. And the value prop, for lack of better words, that DataRobot has is probably the best and the only that I'd say really resonates at the CEO level. So certainly CIOs, CTOs, business leaders, but really at the CEO. And if you think about the impact of AI and ML around every business function, whether it's the revenue side, whether it's the cost side, it's the operational side, the efficiency side, the compliance side. I mean, it's really just, takes things to the next level. So I don't think I've ever had any reach outs to, very large company CEOs where they said they're not interested, right? It goes down to the next level. Sometimes you may get the not invented here mentality, but more times than not, leads to some fantastic engagements. And we've done some great work at a lot of large companies, and then also some smaller ones, since we're talking about Boston a little bit, even down to the Boston Red Sox. So you got them all over the place, from a B of A all the way down to Boston Red Sox. So maybe kind of share a little bit more about DataRobot with us, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, first off, Randy, thanks for all your help as we've continued to build the company. And, it is I think a really exciting time to be at DataRobot. It's an exciting time to be in AI because every company is becoming an AI company. And every person now is becoming what we call a citizen data scientist. And we're right in the middle of that and helping to drive that movement. And we do it through a combination of automation and what we call relentlessly practical education. So helping people to understand how they can use the technology to solve real business problems and to generate, business value. And the nice thing about what we do is we can get in the door, the conversation, because it's not, top 3 on every CEO's list, AI, it's usually top 5. At the same time, we do that conversation because of the value that we deliver. And it's not, theoretical. We've done it with a third of Fortune 50, which are customers, and many of the top companies in every industry, and also in the public sector. And, as Randy was saying, we started out in Boston, but today we've got about 1,600 people. We've raised over $1 billion, and leading companies all around the world, helping them to get more value from their data.
That's great. So last summer, I think you did a round of about $330 million at a $6.3 billion valuation.
Yeah, that was a nice milestone for the company. And we were fortunate to have a lot of great investors join us. We had a lot of our existing investors invest, but also, Altimeter and Tiger co-led that round. But we had new investors like Franklin Templeton, T. Rowe, some of the crossover investors, and then also some strategic investors like Salesforce and ServiceNow actually made a significant investment in that round as well. So it was a nice milestone for the company.
That's great. Well, typically those companies don't invest for small returns, so it looks like the future is very bright. So if you do any multiples off of a $6.3 billion number, they're all really good. Maybe talk a little bit more about kind of who you sell to, your ICP, and anything around your sales model.
Yeah. So our sales model, and this is something that we've really tried to focus on over the couple of years, it's all about value-based selling. I mentioned that at the end of the day, you can get your foot in the door by being strategic, right? By having an interesting technology that hits on, an important point for an executive or a board of directors. But what ultimately is going to drive continued growth in any account is the value that you deliver. And so we do value-based selling. We focus on kind of leading indicators of success. We're, very focused on qualification because it's a blessing and a curse. We could bill to anybody, but obviously that's not, very efficient. So we try to qualify in, qualify out. We use Medic, and then we also try to continue that value-based engagement even post-sale. So we do what we call a joint success plan with a customer, and we set a plan to realize value over time, and then we have lots of consistent touch points, usually monthly or quarterly, with the customer to track the value that's being delivered. And then we also monitor for user usage and other what we call VRIs, value realization indicators, post-sale, and monitor the health of accounts on an ongoing basis. In terms of who we sell to, there's 3 legs to the stool. So it starts off with line of business. Typically, we first approach line of business. And the nice thing about what we do is, as you were saying, Randy, can be many lines of business in different parts of an organization. So if we're working with a bank and we work with most of the top banks, I think we work with 9 of the top 10 banks now. You can be anywhere from consumer and digital to fixed income, global banking. You can do in risk and even kind of the infrastructure around ML ops. How do you monitor and manage and automate all of the model risk management process? So as data changing and making sure that models are kept up to date and that there's no drift, also monitoring for bias and fairness. We can do all of that. So we sell to line of business. Oftentimes we'll approach multiple lines of business. We sell to data science. So many of these now have a chief data officer. And for them, they look at us, and a big part of the value proposition is how do they become more productive? Because a lot of them have a big backlog of use cases. We can automate that and help them keep up and get ahead. And then also we sell to IT. And, there it's around automating some of these otherwise manual processes and helping to make that, the values ultimately being delivered for the business on time and what it needs to be.
That's great. And you recently hired, if I get the name right, Demanjan Saha from Google as a CEO, Damon Fletcher, Tableau as CFO. So really surround yourself with some great people.
Yeah, so Debanjan Saha is our president and COO, and Debanjan was not an easy recruit, but I'm very happy that he joined some great options. He was at Google running all of data analytics globally, which is multi-billion-dollar line of business for them. And before that, he was running Amazon Aurora. He launched that at Amazon and a significant business for Amazon. So we're very fortunate to have him at the company, leading product and technology also for us. And then we also, as you said, hired Damon Fletcher. Damon was at Tableau for several years, as they became a public company. And then obviously they ultimately got acquired by Salesforce, and he stayed for a bit and then joined us. But yeah, great adds to the team. And, I think if I've learned anything over the years, with a great team, you can accomplish everything. Without it, can't accomplish anything. And so that was really a focus of mine when I joined the company.
Oh, that's great. So what would be your elevator pitch to a recruit? So we got lots of people here. It could be SDRs, could be sales leaders, maybe some on the pre-sales side. What's your pitch?
I mean, my pitch is there's no bigger market than AI, right? It's impacting not only companies and individuals, where those companies are changing and individuals are changing their careers. It's impacting countries. It's impacting states like West Virginia, where I am currently. And, it's impacting society. And there's not many places where you can go work where it's not only, probably the best place you could possibly go for your career. Because again, AI is not going anywhere. It's really the future, I think, of every industry. But it's also for society, because a lot of the things that we do actually have a really positive impact on society, actual people's lives. Even, one of the things that, we're working on here in West Virginia is predictive health. We're helping them to predict, for example, if somebody is going to who's an addict is going to have a relapse, so that there can be an intervention before that happens, and you avoid that cycle of addiction. And also helping even with, pandemic response. We've been doing that here with West Virginia, helping to predict what's going to happen so that they can optimize everything from vaccine distribution to staffing. And so I think you tell those stories and people are like, wow, that's a pretty rare opportunity to do something that's career and also, good for the.
Yeah, that's great. And so I'm in. Sounds awesome. Now it sounds like you've got some new board members. What's behind that?
I think it comes back to the same thing I mentioned, which is I think, to build a great company, you have to have a great team. And I'm a big believer that if you can find people that have experienced what, or maybe certain aspects of what you're going to go through, you can learn from their successes and their mistakes. And that was really what I was looking for, bringing some, operators onto the board, and also kind of a voice of the customer. And so we brought in David Cherry. Dave was on my board at AppDynamics, president and CEO of MongoDB. Joined them 3 years before the IPO, and then obviously have done what they've done as a public company. We brought on Tracy Newell, who was the former president of Informatica. Again, incredible run as an operator, and now an incredible board member. We brought on people like Chuck Rebell, who's seen every sort of thing under the sun, I would say, when it comes to being a director at some of the leading companies in the world. Also people like Sigal Zarmi, who was the global CIO of Morgan Stanley. And that, voice kind of constantly reminding me what's important when it comes to, and Devanjan, for example, what's important when it comes to the product and technology, and just how do we obsess about solving our customers' problems. It's just very, very helpful. Also, Amit Sinha, who is a board member, president and CTO of Zscaler, joined them very early on, helped take that company public, and obviously they've done incredibly well and really changed that industry. And so, I'm a big believer in you build a great team and good things will happen, and I think we've done that.
It's certainly, I was just say, certainly a lot for you to juggle. It's crazy for those board members, and you also have kind of a Boston legend in Jim Cash as well.
Yeah, Jim Cash. Jim's been an incredible addition to us. Yeah, and definitely a legend. Jim, he is. First off, he knows everybody. I mean, I think he's connected to everybody. But secondly, he just has so much knowledge that has been really helpful to me, obviously, when it comes to how to build a great organization, how to think about organizational structure, and how to align people across teams. But also, lots of other topics. He actually recently did a talk to our company around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And he's helping us even earlier this week, or I guess last week, I was talking to him about some interesting stuff we're doing with Harvard. So keeping it in the Boston family, and he's been a great ad for us.
Oh, that's great. Nour?
Dan, love the DataRobot story, your background, just kind of your lens and perspective on the folks you've added. So obviously the title of this session is building a company that changes the world. Share with us kind of your glimpse into how you're doing that, what it takes to do that. Let's just kind of talk through a couple of things that are top of mind in terms of making a real impact. I love the pitch to potential recruits. Come be a part of something that's more than just incremental change. Come be a part of something that's more profound and much more impactful.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it starts with helping people understand the impact that they can have. And that, is something that we're able to do at DataRobot, because I believe that this change for where every company is becoming an AI company is the biggest change that's going on in society right now. And it's not just in the private sector, but also in the public sector. So getting people fired up about that is easier than it may be at other companies. But I think at every company, it's important that people buy into the mission and the vision of what you're trying to do. And then after that, after you have a clear mission, I think it's down to, having PPE, as I call it. So people, plan, and then execution, right? So first off, it starts with people. And we talked a little bit about how we're continuing to build the team at the company and just focus on bringing new people in that can supplement the talent that we already have. But we also have incredible talent already at the company. So how do we continue to develop that talent? And we have a lot of programs focused on that. And then, having a clear plan. One thing that we've implemented since I joined is OKRs, and really having technology that allows people to understand what are the company's goals, how are we measuring our progress, and aligning across teams. I think the hardest thing in any high growth technology company is to focus. But we've really done that, and we're continuing to drive that, because if you focus, you can get a lot more accomplished than if you try to do everything under the sun at once. And then the last part is just execution. And that is really just being very open and transparent on what's going well, and just as importantly, what's not, and what are we going to do to fix it. And those are, the three high-level pillars that we have that we use to build DataRobot, and we're continuing to use those.
Just a quick follow-up question. Obviously, you had a great experience at App Dynamics. Are there some that directly translated in helping you kind of be the steward of DataRobot that you've become? Are there some that really kind of resonated with you early on in joining the company?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some things that I took from App Dynamics that helped, both in terms of, things that we did well. And like, I would put value-based selling in the category of something that we did well at App Dynamics, but also things that in hindsight, I think we could have done a little bit better, right? And one example of that would be really pushing to, more of a multi-cloud architecture early on, and really pushing cloud first. And so we've learned from that, and we've kind of gone more aggressively in that direction faster at DataRobot than I think we did even at App Dynamics. And so I think it's been helpful in both ways. And then there's things that I've learned that, DataRobot did that we didn't do at App Dynamics that have been great, things that we want to continue and double and triple down on. And then there's also all these other learnings from some of our board members and other people in my network, and I try to pull in the best parts of those too.
Oh, that's great. So on the obviously value selling is a big topic that comes up all the time. Do you have your kind of own homegrown, or using kind of any other platform or anything?
Yeah, so we it's a mix. So we use some tools. So we use Clary. We also use People.ai. We use MindTickle for sales enablement, and that's actually been really helpful. It's amazing the engagement you get from people as you're ramping them, if they can do it in little bite-sized chunks and you make it engaging. We do use Captivate IQ, and full disclosure, I'm an investor in Captivate IQ, but great company. And we use some of the tools that we've actually developed internally. Some of which, we took from some of the learnings at App Dynamics, and then some of them are totally new to DataRobot as well. We use a lot of DataRobot on DataRobot as part of our go-to-market, and that's something that definitely helps us, and we're now seeing customers start to use it as well.
Yeah, and then on the value selling side, you also have some great use cases for the sales and marketing function as well at companies, right?
Yeah, exactly. For us, like you talk about value-based selling, there's a lot of interesting metrics around, propensity to buy and cross-sell and upsell, and we can do a lot of that with DataRobot. And then, what's interesting is we do use DataRobot for almost everything internally. We use it from everything from our, sales processes to, as you said, marketing, helping to score leads, helping to predict which campaigns are going to be most effective, helping to customize our marketing to the customer. And then we also use it even for things like financial planning and forecasting. And then we use it even for things like figuring out, how should I allocate my time? What are the things that I can focus on that are going to have the best impact, the biggest impact on the business? And what are the things that I should deprioritize? And it's funny, when I talk to CEOs at other companies, they're like, where can I buy that? Because that's a problem that everybody has. So, by experimenting internally and using ourselves as a guinea pig, we're able to identify new use cases. And as you said, Randy, marketing's definitely been one area where that's been the case.
Great. So just as a reminder for those watching or listening in, you can post a question, and we have Tucker behind the scenes who will pull them up, and we'll do our best to get to them. So we have from Jesse, what's the number one problem facing CROs today?
I think the number one problem facing CROs today is recruiting and retaining great talent. Like I'm a big believer that, again, everything starts with having great people and retaining those great people, inspiring great people. And let's be honest, the market for talent's never been more competitive than it is today. And I think that's definitely true of talent on the go-to-market side of the house. And so That's the number one thing I would say is you have to recruit and retain great talent. And a lot of that starts with building a culture that everybody buys into. How are you developing your people? And if you have examples of people who are being developed, who are, being successful, who are not only making money, but advancing in their careers, then people will not only want to join your company, they'll want to stay.
Absolutely. Well said. So moving on. So you've been on the road. I saw a post from Saudi Arabia. What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting time in Saudi Arabia. So I was just there, as you said. They are in this interesting point in time where they're really transitioning from being a market that's really based on oil and gas, and it's not that they're going away from oil and gas. Obviously, that's a huge part of the economy, but they are really embracing technology. And I'll tell you, they are really embracing AI and have a clear vision around what they want to do. They have what they call Vision 2030 and some pretty ambitious goals around everything from improving health outcomes to improving fitness to improving the percentage of women, increasing the percentage of women in the workplace. So it's really a diverse set of goals that they have, but they've written it all down. It's a very engaging thing. I encourage everybody to read it. And I was actually recently there at IPTC, which is the largest oil and gas conference in the world. I was invited by Aramco, and I was there with several panelists, including their CDO, the CTO of Chevron, and others. And it was really interesting for them to talk about some of the changes that are happening in energy with use cases around increasing sustainability, to increasing output, to increasing reserves. So there's some really interesting use cases really across all aspects of the energy industry. And obviously that's, I think, goes hand in hand with a lot of things that they're doing with Vision 2030 and, kind of changing that entire country. So it's been really interesting for me to learn more about that and to start to get involved.
Dan, I'm fascinated by another attribute of the DataRobot brand, which is fascinating partnerships and events. Talk a little about the McLaren Racing and the Zach Brown partnership.
Yeah, well, I was just with Zach actually at the Saudi Grand Prix in Jeddah, and that is a really exciting partnership. We really just started that in the fall of last year. This is our first race season together. But already we're, being used by McLaren to optimize every aspect of their performance, right? And what's exciting to me is I think that's a really unique opportunity because of a couple things. One is they have an incredible amount of data. They have so much data. They're collecting data, from all these cars. I didn't realize that they had a team of 50 people. Like when I was there in Saudi with Zach, they had a team of 50 people at what they call mission control back in London, who are just crunching all of the data and telling both the team in the garage and doing the pit to also the drivers what needs to be done to squeak out just a little more performance. And if you compound all those insights that you can get from all that data across, every part of every single lap and every single stop, which is the most critical part, and then you extrapolate that out across an entire season, you can have a big impact. And especially if you continue to do that in multiple years. And McLaren's really innovating. I mean, the other F1 teams, to my knowledge, are not doing the same things that they're doing. And so I think it's a great opportunity for Zach and the team to really get some performance gains. And we're hoping that it'll make for a very good story here as McLaren shoots up the standings, hopefully this year and in the coming years.
I live in Atlanta. You had an event here in Atlanta, and a insurance executive showed up, had a great experience, and that accelerated the sale.
Yeah, well, I don't live in Atlanta. Right now I live in San Francisco, but I to really live on a plane at this point. So I'm all over. But yeah, no, the Atlanta event was a great event for us, and we find that. I mean, if we can get people in a room and talk to them about what we do. The nice thing is we have great examples of where we've made an impact in every industry, so we can tell those stories. And usually those make for good conversations and good follow-ups.
How about, what do you tell CEOs who are not doing, again, obviously global pandemic has set, a lot of people back, but those that are not doing really clever, engaging events, what's your comment to them?
I think you have to do it. I mean, I think you have to do it. I think actually now more than ever post-pandemic, people want to engage with each other. People want to be together. And, you can do that virtually. We've certainly done that virtually. And if you can do it in person, it's the best, right? I think there's no substitute for that. And so, I just say, I think it's not even optional. I think you have to find a way. And you can be creative about how you do it. I've seen people even do, cameo videos or, virtual, events. But some way or another, you have to find a way to connect with people on a personal level in order to build partnerships.
Absolutely. And Nour has several books, one of which is Relationship Economics. So, Nour, I'm sure you're in violent agreement.
Absolutely.
So I know you also have a good size Ukraine team. So certainly, thoughts and prayers go out to them. How have you been dealing with that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, our thoughts and prayers are always with our Ukraine team. And, it's obviously been a really terrible, difficult situation. We have about 250 employees in Ukraine. We originally opened our doors there in 2014. So we have a longstanding history with Ukraine. What I will say is that team is some of the most inspiring, hardworking, brilliant people, not only at the company, but that I've ever worked with. And, I think it's no surprise that they've rallied together the way that they have in crisis. And, it's been really, frankly, inspirational to me to see the entire company rally around them. And we've done, quite a bit to try to help. Everything from housing and logistics assistance to, helping with counseling when needed and other types of financial support as well. So we're really trying to do everything we can for that team. But I mean, they're incredible. I mean, they want to do everything from making sure that they're helping their families to helping others that need it in Ukraine to, some of them have said, we want to go back to work, and we're like, no, you got to focus on other things. But, a lot of them want to do that. And I think it just shows the type of people that they are. And, the one thing I will say is, fortunately, we had planned ahead a little bit. We obviously hoped that the worst wouldn't come to pass, but you have to plan ahead. And so we did plan for the eventuality if it ended up happening.
For our audience, if you just joined us late, you're listening to Dan Wright, CEO of DataRobot. It's a fascinating company, and they're doing some really interesting things. It sounds like it permeates through the culture, and not just wall art, but ideas they deeply believe in and they implement. And Dan, in our conversation, I really like you're one of the cultural attributes of dream big. And
yeah.
as we all know, the tech sector regrettably is very male dominated, and it sounds like you guys are doing with this WAI camp something really interesting in Latin America. Talk a little about kind of genesis of that and where that came from.
Yeah, I mean, well, Dream Big's been a part of DataRobot for a long time. It was originally our founder Jeremy's idea. I think he came up with this idea of encouraging employees to dream big, not just in work, but also, for their entire lives, right? What are the goals that they have for not just 1 year out, but 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out, and then creating a plan to work towards that goal with, accountability support, right? And I've been through it. It's an incredible program that really forces you to think about things that you might not think about every day because everybody's so busy. But, what do I want for not only my career, but also my family? What do I want for my health? What do I want for, maybe I want hobbies, it can be anything, but anything that's important to you, setting goals around that and planning for it makes it, exponentially more likely that you're going to get where you want to be in life. And I love this story with Balin on our team. She is an incredible woman on our team that decided that she wanted to create a camp, like a program for women in Latin America that allows them to learn about AI. And so she partnered with our team at DataRobot University, which is run by a woman named Sharon Castillo, who's fantastic. Sharon was one of the women and people that was behind Trailblazers with Salesforce. And we've learned a lot about that from Mark Hawkins, who's on our board, former president and CFO of Salesforce I think he was there for about a decade. And she has really brought some great things from that to DRU that we then were able to apply to WayCamp and help people build skills that, maybe they didn't think that they would have the opportunity to build, and get opportunities in a rapidly growing field. And I think that's a unique thing that we can do at DataRobot, and something that we talk a lot about in the company is we can actually help people significantly in their careers by allowing them to learn how to use DataRobot to solve really important problems that companies need solved in every industry. And if you can give people a new career path, there's a lot you can do with that, and you can really inspire some people. And I think that what's happened with WayCamp has just been that. It's been inspirational, certainly to the people who've been involved, but also to our company. And then even when I talk about it to our customers, they say, "Wow, that's pretty cool."
I think both Randy and I, as fathers of daughters, we also love the idea of closing the gender gap and using AI to do that.
Exactly, that's right. And I have a daughter myself, and so I love the mission there. And Balin, she's fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome. So what about some of your thoughts on talent management? So we've got a lot of sales leaders. Probably most of our audiences are sales leaders. What advice would you have?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one thing is try to be very thoughtful about how you interview, right? I think that is one thing that seems very simple, but a lot of people skip over. And when I'm talking to founders, especially early stage founders, I say, just make sure that you really are rigorous in your interview process. I think there's a tendency when you're building at hyperspeed to just want to let people in the door to help. And you want to let people in the door, but you want to let the right people in the door. And it's especially important earlier on in a company's life, because those people are going to be the ones that hire your next people and the next people and the next people, and it continues to build. So if you can hire great people and make sure that you're designing your interview process so that it is, probing for things, not only, kind of experience, but also somebody's character, also their intelligence, how coachable are they? And, also how well do they align to your values, right? And how bought into are they to the mission? Those types of things, if you're really intentional about testing for them, those have benefits later on. And then once you get the right people in the door, you have to manage them well. I think a huge part of that is development. And so we do a lot of work, both, through boot camps. We have a new hire boot camp, but we have ongoing boot camps for different topics. We do QBRs and our SKO, which we just had in Las Vegas. We do a lot of development there. And then we do async development as well and learning. I mentioned MindTickle, but we have quite a bit of content that we use where people can consume that in bite-sized chunks. And then we, track everybody and how they're doing in their learning, and where we see gaps, we try to help with that. I think inspiration is a huge part of it, because if you can inspire people, then they'll want to develop, they'll want to learn, versus if you're just, telling people they have to do something, but you don't inspire them first, that's not the ticket to the best culture. And so I think it's really important to, lead with inspiration, to do development on an ongoing basis, and then also to give feedback, right? I think one thing that we've really tried to do since I joined the company is make sure that feedback is not a once a year thing. It's not even a once a quarter thing. It's an all the time thing, and giving people regular feedback on what they're doing well, but also where they can improve.
That's great. I always say it's a lot of times individual contributors think it's the boss of their manager, but the person, whoever you work for should also be saying, hey, can I give you some, what feedback do you have for me? Can I give you some feedback, right? And it's always, always a hard thing to do, but certainly great. And I know you've also done some really good things to improve, most of us would call the work-life balance at DataRobot. Nour calls it work-life blending. But you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly tried. I mean, I think it is always a challenge, I think, in any high growth company, but you have to be intentional about it. And so we've done a number of things to try to do that. We have unlimited vacation, but we also try to make it clear that like it's good to take a vacation. I think the expectation that you said is very important there. That a vacation is a healthy thing to do, and we want you to get that time with your family. Actually, one of the first things that I did after I took my role as CEO is I actually shared some pictures from my 15th wedding anniversary trip my wife and I took. We went back to the same place that we had our honeymoon and just said, hey, I went on a vacation. And it's important that you have a life outside of work and that you celebrate big milestones and that you spend time with your family. We want that because we know that people need that, and that will keep you here for the long term. And we don't want you for a year or, even 2 years. We want you to be here for a long time. And so that balance is really important. We also did kind of a recharge day with the whole company lately. And I think people really appreciated that. They gave, lots of posts, lots of stories of different things that they had done with their family. And what I've seen is you end up getting more done. They come back the next day and they're fired up to charge the hill together. And so I think it's a really positive thing. I think the other thing is you have to enable people to work however they're most productive. And that requires that you invest in tools and processes that enable that. And so we've invested really significantly in tools. Like I mentioned that we do OKRs. That's something we've implemented. We use Workboard for that, helping to monitor our progress, not just at the company level. We have what we call our level 1 OKRs, but down to the team level, right? And everything cascades down, which just allows people to stay aligned even as they're working in all parts of the world and even remotely. And then we've also made our workspaces, I'd say, much more flexible. A lot of it is flex space now, whereas before we had a lot of assigned seating. And then we've, I'd say, really doubled and tripled it down on communication. We have a all company meeting every single week. A lot of weeks it's just an informal all hands where we'll just do Q&A with the company and keep it really informal. Everybody's having coffee, hanging out. And then, once a month we do a more polished, company meeting that we prepare for. And then we'll do lots of, other sessions on different topics as well. But I think, especially with a more distributed workforce, which I think everybody has today post-COVID, you got to be a little more flexible and creative about how you engage. You got to invest to make it work. And then you got to over communicate.
Yeah, that's great. So so where was the vacation back to where you had your honeymoon?
Yeah, this is a while ago. So my wife and I celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary in June of last year, and we were in Bora Bora, and we were actually at the same place that we stayed at 15 years ago. Hadn't been back, so I can say it hasn't changed much. The rest of the world has changed a lot. Bora Bora is pretty much the same, except for they have internet now. That was the one big change.
Too bad you weren't forced to quarantine there, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was interesting talking to some of the people there. It's like, the worst places to quarantine. We went right after it had opened back up, but before then it had been completely empty. So they were kind of lamenting a little bit all the tourists coming back, but also obviously it's good for the economy there. So
that's great. Hey, so just a quick reminder, any folks watching, feel free to post any questions or comments, and we got Tucker behind the scenes to make sure we get to them.
So Dan, you posted a great quote recently from MLK, Martin Luther King, that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Why is that important to you?
Yeah, I mean, that is really important to me. I mean, I think without getting too much into it, one of my really close friends passed away when I was in high school, or sorry, in law school, I should say. And it was actually when I was living in Boston. This was, my best friend who I'd known since kindergarten. And it kind of paused me to think about, hey, we've got a limited amount of time here on Earth, and how do we make sure that we're making the biggest impact that we can with our lives? And for me, what that meant personally to me, and continues to mean to me, is how can you positively impact other people's lives? And that quote from MLK has always really resonated with me. And, I try to just figure out different ways that I can make a positive impact any way I can. And I also think, and one reason why I wanted to join DataRobot, I think that's part of what the company does, and it's been about too. It's been about more than, just doing well as a company, but also impacting our employees' lives, impacting our customers, and helping them all change the world. And so that's what drew me to the company, and that's what continues to get me fired up, on a daily basis.
Oh, that's great. So obviously lots of great things, but any things that you'd share that you wish maybe could have been different or better, or disappointments with DataRobot?
Yeah, I mean, we've been really fortunate in a lot of ways, and we have an incredible team. I think there's always learnings along the way. Company building is not an easy thing to do. So we've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. But what I think is important is that you learn from them. And I think one thing that I've really learned is you do need to communicate very clearly with people about what you are going to prioritize, what the strategy is, and just as importantly, what it's not. And we've tried to, just be really clear about that. I'm continuing to try to, be clear about that, to communicate consistently. I think it's especially important as we grow because, even since I've joined the company, we've grown significantly in terms of headcount. We've gone into different parts of the world that we were never in before. And so, making sure that you are communicating consistently, and a lot of times you'd love it to be one-on-one, but oftentimes it needs to be one-to-many, just so you can reach everybody. And then that you're, even embedding some of the more important messages around what is the company's mission, what are our values, right? And that's been something that we spent a lot of time on over the last couple of years. And also, what are our goals and how are we going to measure those goals? Even embedding that into the hiring process, and then also the onboarding process for new employees is really important. And so we tried to do that. Actually, pretty recently, I started meeting with every batch of new hires for other CEOs out there. It's something I would highly recommend. Our employees really appreciate it. I get a lot of it, every single time, and it's interesting. I do that once a month where I'll meet with all the new hires, and I've been doing it for a while now. And somehow I almost never get the same question. It's always a different question. And so it makes for some really good conversations. And I just think it's a really nice way to welcome people into the company.
Awesome.
Switch gears and talk about, is this Mike Wimmer, the 12-year-old kind of AI wonder kid who graduated from college? I suddenly feel very inadequate, Dan. What's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, Mike has that effect on people. He certainly has that effect on me. He is something else. I mean, he is a true wonder kid. He obviously is blown through school, got all sorts of degrees. But not only that, he's got multiple companies. He's one of the most impressive people I've ever met. I met him and his father, and I was just completely blown away. We had him on our podcast, More Intelligent Tomorrow. It was probably the most viewed, liked podcast that we had. And just a really inspirational kid. And I'll tell you, I have 8-year-old twins, and I have a 5-year-old. And I tell them a lot of stories about DataRobot. They asked me to tell them DataRobot stories, and so I'll just talk to them about different things we're doing with the company, with our customers, and with what our employees are up to. And they asked me to talk a little bit about Mike, and so I showed them the podcast, and they were, I think, pretty inspired. I mean, when you're 8, you're like, oh, maybe I can actually do some pretty incredible things over the next few years. So it's a pretty inspirational story, and he's an amazing person.
Well, that's great. So you're down there in West Virginia. You've got a great partnership with the state, with the university. John Chambers has played a hand in it. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, I mean, really pretty amazing story here in West Virginia. We talked a little bit about what's going on in Saudi Arabia. but West Virginia is a state in transition. And I actually had no prior experience with West Virginia. I hadn't even been there if you were to flash back 18 months ago. But I talked to John, who is a friend who I got to know through another friend of mine who's a founder and CEO of Quantum Metric, Mario Ciabarra. And John's now on Mario's board and he's an investor. But early days, he was just a mentor to Mario. And I got introduced to him. And as I was talking to him, he told me, you got to check out West Virginia. Obviously, he grew up in West Virginia. It's got a special place in his heart, but he's like, it's not that. West Virginia is transitioning into a startup state. And he's like, you may have heard about Austin. You may have heard, what's going on with Miami, but I'm telling you, you got to check out West Virginia. And the other thing that he told me about West Virginia is it is a true community. So everybody knows everybody and they get stuff done. They like to move quickly, and there's, basically no red tape. You can come here, you can innovate, and then you can scale that throughout the rest of the world. And so he introduced me to several people in the state. Sarah Biller, who works closely with John, who runs Vantage Ventures here. It's, kind of a startup incubator out of WVU. President Gordon Gee, who runs West Virginia University. Governor Justice. Others, and every single person is all in on trying to make West Virginia into a startup hub. And it's so refreshing when you say, hey, I think there's some interesting things that we can do with, to help with predictive health. And that's one thing that we're doing with WVU, working with the Rockefeller Neuroscience Institute, cutting edge stuff, helping with predictive health. Or if you think, hey, we can help with the pandemic and what we're doing with the joint task force, they call it the GIADF in West Virginia to help with that. But not just this pandemic, helping to make sure that we're prepared for future pandemics and other contagious diseases. And then, even things like how do you make sure that we are best using taxpayer funds in a way that's going to optimize return and doing more intelligent budgeting? And how do we predict fraud, waste and abuse and prevent that in order to preserve those funds? We're doing really interesting work on big problems in West Virginia. And I tell every CEO that I meet now, when you're thinking about where to start a company or where to build a company, you should definitely check out West Virginia because everybody's all in on wanting to help you solve big problems. And at the end of the day, that's what we do as tech companies, right? We solve big problems with technology. And you can do that quickly here. And then now what we're doing is we're taking a lot of that and we're bringing it to other states in the union. And, it's not theoretical, right? We've done it with West Virginia, so we can do it, in all those other states.
That's great. Bring it down in Florida. And I tell you, same theme coming from Massachusetts to here. I mean, just shocking how, just health insurance, Department of Motor Vehicles, tax, LLC, just the whole thing. It's just so customer business friendly, which is polar opposite from where it came from up north for sure. Yeah. So we have a question from Sean Green here. Thanks, Sean. What were your lessons learned on communication through the last 2 years? And what tools do you use to have consistent global message that is consistent and clear? And my guess is probably not as much tools as opposed to kind of a process that you have.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say one thing is just honestly being intentional about it. It's really easy to say, hey, we're too busy. Like, we don't need to do it every week. I'm a big believer in trying to communicate every week. And sometimes, we have our whole team join, our whole leadership team join. Some weeks, I can't make it. Some weeks other people can't make it. But we try to join as many as we can. And I think just the effort to do it and that consistency of communication is really important. And also just kind of sending the message that you can ask any question and we want to hear from you. Right. And I'd say, the other thing that we've done is we have tried to be very thoughtful around, okay, with more formal communications, what are the things that people really need to hear? And what do we need to deliver those up in sort of a nice package in an all company meeting? And what can we do asynchronously, through Slack or through, MindTickle or through, any other tool. And also, what should maybe be a breakout for a specific audience. So we tried to create a whole calendar and be really thoughtful about how we do that. And then, I would say the other thing in terms of the consistency of the message, we went through a whole process around our OKRs. We went through a whole process around engaging the company around our values. And that was really positive because I think that allowed us to get really aligned on what those things are. What is our strategy? What are the goals that we're trying to accomplish? What are our values? And then communicating those consistently is really important, especially when you're growing really fast and new people are coming in all the time. Just being really consistent from the time the person joins the company through, eventually, unfortunately, many people leave the company, making really sure that you're consistent about communicating those things. And so I'd say the number one thing is just being intentional about it. We have invested in a lot of different systems to enable that and tools, but it all starts with just deciding that you want to do it and that it's important.
Dan, one of the things I wrote in Curve Benders, and Randy and I talk a lot about, is we're all products of the advice we take. Can you comment on a particular piece of advice from a mentor of yours that really resonated with you? And what advice would you give Dan of 20 years ago? So a younger version of yourself.
I mean, I would say one thing is one mentor of mine, told me that you can't be afraid to take some calculated risks. Like, you don't want to take reckless risks for the sake of, taking risks, but you got to take some calculated risks in order to try to make an impact, And so I'd say that was one. Another thing that somebody told me is that, every business is a relationship business. And I truly believe that. I think if you invest in people, if you invest in relationships, and, you continue to build those over time, you will be successful. It's almost guaranteed, regardless of what field you're in, that you will be successful. And so those are two things that really stick out to me.
It's fantastic. Randy, I think gonna bring us home?
Absolutely. So anyway, so you've been awesome. I have to put in a plug for a revenue leader masterclass that we have. Sales Impact Academy is kind of a Peloton app for sales training, maybe something DataRobot should look at. But anyway, we have something coming up titled Measuring What Matters. It's a great podcast, Thursday, April 14th at 11 a.m. Tucker, I think, will be posting it somewhere on here maybe, and then it's definitely in, there it is, definitely in sales community and on my post. So, Nour, do you want to ask your usual final question?
Yeah, I want to know, Dan, I mentioned I pay, either cash or send really nice bottles of scotch for great stories of Randy Seidel. The better the story. If I can print a T-shirt, we're all in. Just give us a good story about Randy, just your interactions with him.
All right. Well, I will say, Randy, I'll give you one story, which is Randy. I think he's one of the most well-connected people I know. And we talked about how the importance of people and relationships, right? Well, Randy has mastered that. And I remember that he was at a wedding and a certain CEO of a certain Fortune 500 company was there. And I was just struck by the relationships that he's built. And anyway, I'll just leave it at that. But he knows people. Randy knows people.
Easy.
For our audience, there's more to that story.
Anyway,
you gotta wait to hear it.
Yeah. So thanks, Captivate IQ, for our sponsor today. Dan, you've been awesome. For those watching, feel free to share it. We get thousands of views after the fact. And Nour, as always, you've been awesome. Thanks so much. And Dan, most importantly, safe travels, and thanks for all the great work that DataRobot does for businesses and society overall.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was great talking to you.
All right, thanks. Take care.